Hello and welcome to ICT Revision Notes. Today we're looking at Chapter 4, Networks and the Effect of Using Them. So today we'll be looking at the 6 areas: network devices and data packet, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, cloud computing. We'll look at LANs, WAN. Then we'll do security and authentication. Finally, we'll look at electronic conferencing. All right, so to begin with, we look at networks, which is basically a group of connected computers and devices that share resources together. So in this example here, we're looking at some key reasons for having a network. In this picture, at the center, we have centralized control and security. So when you have a centralized control and security, it's basically having the network administrator to manage the users on the network, to manage files, to manage software and security settings from a single location rather than on individual computers. Now, so that is the first reason for having to share a network, right? The next reason is resources. So resources here, we're looking at printers and storage devices. So multiple users can share hardware and software resources, in the process reducing costs and improve efficiency. So several computers can use the same printers, and in the same sense, users can access shared software installed on a server, and then storage devices can be shared across the network. Another benefit has to do with communication. So for communication, users within the network can quickly send emails between each other. They are able to use instant messaging or chat applications, and then also they can hold voice or video conferencing. And then finally, for data sharing, users can access, share, and work on the same data from different computers. So, example, employees accessing a shared network database can, work on the same data. And again, students collaborating on shared documents, and then we can have teachers storing lesson materials on a shared folder for students to access. So these are some key reasons for having a network. For every network, there's a network interface card that allows the device to connect to a network, and each network interface card has a unique MAC address. Now, mostly there are two main types of network interface cards: the wired and then the wireless, which is the W and IC. In this picture here, this is the wired one that has a 2 ports, and the rest are wireless. All right. Now we want to look at MAC addresses. So MAC addresses basically means media access control address, or also called the physical address. Is a permanent and unique identifier for every network device, and it's made up of 48-bit hexadecimal address. Now, MAC addresses are used by network administrators to troubleshoot in order to track fault within the network devices on the network. Now, again, they are used by switches to send data packet to the current device on the network. Unlike IP addresses that changes, the MAC address does not change unless you change the network interface card. So the IP address, which is in full the Internet Protocol address, is a logical address that identify a device's location on a network. So, for example, if you're using your computer from a cafe, the IP address you have will be different if you move to your home, right? So the IP addresses changes and helps to identify your location on the network. All right. So that is it for IP addresses. Now, there are two versions of the IP addresses. We have the IP version 4 and IP version 6. So the IP version 6 was introduced because the IP version 4 has been exhausted. Okay. All right. Now, if you want to check your IP address and MAC address all you have to do is to go to the search button and look for CMD and hit enter. And once you type in ipconfig/all, it will display your MAC address and the IP version which you are on, or the IP address you are using. All right, so that is it for MAC addresses and IP address. Next, we're looking at data packets. All right, so data is broken into small packets before it's been transmitted across a network. And each data packet has three parts: the header, the payload, and the trailer. For IG, our interest is on the header, right? So you need to know the component of the header of every data packet. And in those data packets, we have the sender address, you have the receiver IP address, we have the sequence number, the packet size, and the total packet number. So basically, this is how routers use packets. So they receive a packet at one point and they have to check the destination IP, compare it against a routing table, and then they forward it to the next router till it gets to the right device. Now, once the packet data hits the right device, it's reassembled into the correct order using a sequence number. So the key concept we want to get here is that data is never one block, right? So it's always split into packets and they travel independently across different. So this is what we mean by traveling on different paths. Now, so if you look at this computer here, it's has is going to send data, but that data will be broken down into various packets. So packet 1, 2, 3, and they're going to go through different routers 1 to 4 in order to get to the web server. So if I send a data from this guy here, it goes in data packet and gets to the web server. All right, so basically that is all there is to data packets. Right, next you have a short test to test your understanding on data packets. And so here the question says, state 3 pieces of information found in the data packet header and explain the purpose of one of them. So I encourage you to pause the video and attempt to answer the question. All right, I want to believe you got the answers right here in the sample answer provided. If you did not get it, you can go back and review on what we have said about data packets and come again to attempt the questions. Next, we looking at hubs and switches. Hubs and switches basically are hardware devices that are used to connect multiple computers in the local area networks. Okay. So if we look at this network, for example, we notice that 6 computers have been connected with a hub. Now, this is how things work when you have a hub at the center of your network. If I'm sending a data packet from PC1 to PC4 through the hub, what happens is that once the data packet hits the hubs, it will distribute it to all the devices on the network. And the reason why it does that is that it does not check the destination address of the data packet. It just broadcasts it to, okay. So it sends data packet to all devices on the network. That's what it does. And as a result of that, there's low security and then it causes unnecessary traffic in the network. The switch, on the other hand, connects devices within a LAN, just like the hub is doing. But the switch uses what is referred to as a MAC address lookup table in order to locate the right PC that the data packet is meant for and sends it directly to that. All right, so it sends data only to the intended device, and in the process, it makes it more secure and an efficient way of sending data in a network. However, there are some similarities between both hubs and switches, and that is they both are used to connect devices in a local area network, and they are used to send data packets. All right, so that is it about switches and hubs. All right, so let's test our understanding on switches and hubs. So you have a typical exam questions here. So describe two differences between the use of a hub and a switch in a local area network. So I encourage you to pause the video and attempt to answer this question based on what we've said so far. Okay, I want to believe you got the answers in the sample answer here. And if you did not get them, you can go back and attempt it again by rewatching the video and coming back to answer the question. All right, next we're going to be looking at bridges and routers. Now, the bridges are meant to connect two LANs, okay, or two segments of LANs using the same protocol. So basically, they extend a local area network. So if you take this image here, we notice that the bridge is connecting LAN A to LAN B, and in the process, the local area network has been extended or expanded. And the only point is that this cannot be connected onto the internet, right? Or it's not connected to the internet. The bridge is not used to connect this local area networks to the internet. The router, on the other hand, plays the same role, connects different networks together, like we've seen, but they make use of IP addresses and routing table. And then again, they connect the local area network to the internet, and they often do this work using switches, right? So that's the difference between a router and a bridge. Now we'll look at Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So when we look at Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, they have some features in common. In terms of frequency, Bluetooth does 2.4 gigahertz, while Wi-Fi's go within a frequency of 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, mean the maximum. In terms of maximum speed, Bluetooth will go to 55 megabytes per second, whilst Wi-Fi should do 250 megabytes per second. In terms of the range at which information can travel from one device to another, is 30 meters for Bluetooth and 100 meters for Wi-Fi. The maximum number of devices that can be connected to some Bluetooth devices are up to 7. However, with the Wi-Fi, depends on the router. Some routers will just allow you to use just one, whilst others you can have as many as 20 or more devices connected to the router. In terms of security, both methods will have some encryption. So for Bluetooth, you need to pair both devices in order for the two devices to communicate. Whilst with the Wi-Fi, you make use of the YPA or YEP encryption, where you have to key in the Wi-Fi security key in order to communicate with that particular Wi-Fi. On the other hand, if you want to consider short range and long range, Bluetooth is mostly used for short range and low bandwidth, whilst Wi-Fi would do a full scale network. Bluetooth, on the other hand, has what is referred to as the spread spectrum frequency hopping, which basically means that the Bluetooth does not stay on one frequency channel whilst transmitting data. So instead of it staying on just one channel, it switches or it hops, all right, between many frequencies several times per second using a technique called the frequency hopping, as we've mentioned. And this helps to reduce interference and improve the reliability of data that is going to be sent, and again enhances the security of data that is being sent from one device to another. So that is it for Bluetooth frequency hopping. On the other hand, for Wi-Fi, there are a series of protocols that needs to be established for data to move from one device to another. So again, we have some test questions for you to try your hands on. So again, you can pause the video and attempt to answer this question. So describe two differences in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, how they operate, okay, and how they operate. So we've seen different features. So you can just list two of each, and that should be it for this particular question. Okay, so I want to believe you got the answers listed below, right? This is just a sample answer. You can go back to the note to refresh your memory if you didn't get everything with that, right? Next, cloud computing storage. So three main types of cloud computing storage are the public cloud, the private, and the hybrid. So as the name suggests, for public, it's open to anyone over the internet. So you can share the same storage space with others, and then you it's quite cheap and easy to use. The private, on the other hand, is being used by only one organization or one company. So, and it's not shared with the public. And so it becomes a more secure but expensive means of storing data. Hybrid is a mixture of both public and private, where sensitive data is being stored in the private cloud and less important or less sensitive data can be stored on the public network or cloud. Some advantages of using all this type of storage is that access. You can access data from anywhere once you have your device, right? Your phone or your laptop, your tablet can access your data anywhere in the world. Now, there's no need to carry extra storage device on you. And then there's remote backup to protect against data loss. Now, again, there's unlimited storage capacity if you want to go as far as you want. Now, you can also synchronize every single file on your machine or a particular folder on your machine to the cloud so that anything you do on your machine automatically gets saved on the cloud. Okay. And it's also a great tool for collaboration so that you are able to share resources with others and work at different points. Some disadvantages, however, is security. I mean, as far as the internet is concerned, you cannot go away without data or security issues. So data can be intercepted, and then when you have low internet, it becomes difficult to access the data that you have. In the case of the private, or if you want a bigger storage space, then there's a need to pay for it. So there's high cost for large storage, and then the risks of cloud providers failure. So I mean, once it's a system, any system can fail, but hardly do we hear of such cases. But there's a risk of cloud providers failing you when you most need your data. Again, we have loss of control over data security. Again, so if there's a third party that is controlling your device, it means that the security of the data can also be compromised. Again, if you have potential hackers or farming activities on your device. Okay, so again, we have some test questions to test our understanding of cloud computing storage. So here's to explain what is meant by cloud computing. And so in this case, we're looking at the storage, and you are supposed to give two advantages of using it for data storage. All right, so pause and then attempt to provide 5 points for this particular question. So to answer questions, you have to look at the marks allocated to the question and give that same point. If it is 2, you give 2 points. If it is 5, you give 5 points. So that is what you need to do in this instance. 5 points. Pause the video and see if you're able to answer this question. I want to believe you got the answers right by looking at the sample answers that are provided here. All right. So that takes us to network types, which are LANs, WLANs, and WAN. So basically, LAN means local area network, whilst WLAN is a wireless area network, and then the WAN is a wide area network. They have different ranges at which data can be transmitted. So within 10 meters to 1 kilometer for the local area network, and then 30 to 100 meters for the wireless. And then we have 100 kilometers to about 1,000 kilometers plus for the wide area network. Now, in terms of advantages, the local area network, um, you share resources, okay, easy for communication, and then there's a central administrator that takes care of everything. With the WLAN, which is a wireless LAN, you don't need any cable, so it makes it safe for people to move around, unlike the LAN where you can have some cables around that can trap people to fall. So you have easy access to, you can easily expand on the network if you want. And then finally, we can make use of mobile devices that can connect to the internet. So mobile devices can easily be used, like your phone, your tablet can easily be connected to the internet. The one, on the other hand, connects geographical distant sites. I mean, different places around the world can be connected together once you are on the internet. So we make use of phones, lines, and satellites, and then it also supports multinational operation. There are some disadvantages as well. So since you are on a local area network and you are sharing files and resources together, it also means that viruses can also spread easily among you. If the server fails, it means you cannot access any information on the shared drive. And so that brings about some security risks as well. Some disadvantages to the wireless one is that when signals are obstructed, I mean, you get the strength of the signal reduces. Okay, and so that affects the way you communicate on the network. Slower than wired, of course. I mean, in some instances, the wireless local area network can really be frustrating if there are a lot of barriers or walls obstructing where the probably the router is located or connecting from. So it's also less secure as compared to the wire. So in terms of hacking, wireless local area network can be easily hacked as compared to the local area network that makes use of cables. When we come to the wide area network, it's more expensive, and then it uses the public network. And again, the issue here is that you can be hacked. Okay. And compared to the LAN, this is also less lower compared to the local area network. These are some images to show us the main types of networks that we are talking about. Okay, so that brings us to the end of networks types. Again, you have a question here to attempt, and so you can pause the video and see if you're able to answer this question. Two disadvantages and two advantages and one disadvantage of using a local area network. So 3 points, and that is it for this one. So these are some areas that you can look at for your answers. Next, we look at authentication methods. So authentication is just a process of proving your identity in order to gain access to a system. And often we use passwords. If you have your computer, for example, or your phone, and you want to have access, often we put in some pins or passwords in order to have access. Now, however, beside the traditional method of using the username and password, there are other methods of having access into a system, and that include the zero login, biometric, magnetic stripe, smart card, physical, and electronic tokens. So we'll take the first one, which is a zero login. So typically, this zero login make use of biometric plus behavior patterns in order to have access to a system. And so let's take a typical example. So assuming I have a long password that is about 40 words, and I take 10 seconds to type in all those 40 words. Now, another person get access to the same device, and and is able also to have access to my password, which has all the 40 words. But however, the person takes about 30 seconds to type in the same password. Now, because the system has studied the behavior or the way I type in, the typing speed, even though the person has logged in the correct password, it will go ahead to verify by providing another layer of security to authenticate whether I'm the same person typing in that password. So that has to do with typing speed as far as behavior is concerned. Now, another can also be with location. So typically, you can travel to a different location to type in your password or you are using your system. So if you are the same person and you are using your machine, let's say you're in a country, let's say you're in Ghana and you travel to the US and you are using your machine, the system using GPS will identify that your usual location of logging in into your system is Ghana, and all of a sudden it has changed into US. So again, there'll be another verification before you are able to log in into your system. So there'll be another layer, a security layer, to ask you one or two questions or ask you to verify by going into your email and entering in another verification code in order to have access to your system. Now, that approach is useful so that if another person or a hacker somewhere outside your jurisdiction is trying to log in into your system and has all your details, it becomes difficult for that person to do that because you will be prompted that another person in another location is trying to have access to your device and you'll be asked to verify whether you are the same person. So, in the instant where you receive that email and then you are not the person logging into your system, then you can quickly draw the attention of um, the administrators and then an action is taken. Now, the same has to do with swiping. So, for example, if I have a card that I swipe always left at a very speed, let's say at 2 seconds to swipe in, and another person gets the same card and is swiping in the left direction and it's taking much longer than I do, again, another layer of security will be brought to question, and the person needs to enter in a password in order to have access to the system. So basically, that is zero login. So typically make use of biometric and behavior patterns to gain access. So for zero login, often there's no need for you to enter any password. So oftentimes people can easily forget their password, and so they make use of the fingerprints, which is difficult for a hacker or another person to steal your identity and use your device. The next one has to do with magnetic stripes. So typically, magnetic stripes are just cards with a magnetic layer at the back of the card, and it holds binary values. Basically, it holds your details, your ID, or it can hold your date of birth and some information that identify you as a user. So the card is used through you have to swipe it through a card reader in order to have access to whatever you intend to use. Common use include building. So if you want to access a building, some companies or individuals make use of the um, magnetic swipe card where you need to swipe the card in order to have access. Some banks also make use of it, and some hotels also make use of the same magnetic stripe in order to have access to your room. Now, the good thing about the card is that if you somehow misplace the card, it can be remotely deactivated so that the next person who has the card is not able to access any information of yours. So, this is a typical example of a magnetic card where the person's details are at the front, and then you have the magnetic stripe at the back of the card. There are some advantages to the use of the magnetic stripe card. Easy to use. There's no need for it's easy to use and not expensive, and it can be deactivated if you have lost it or someone has stolen it from you. Again, it can be used for multiple purposes. So you can have access card. It can be used as a payment card, and it can also use for buying things outside in some grocery shops. Some disadvantages of magnetic stripe cards: they are less secure because you don't need to have any extra form of identification. If another person steals the cards, they can easily have access to your data, and then they can copy it easily. The card can wear out with the frequent use because we keep swiping it through the card reader, and the frequent usage can cause it to wear out. Then the readers may also fail to read the card. I mean, especially when it's the first time you are using it. Security layer, because there's no biometric method. I mean, it is not too safe. All right. Security wise, it is lower than the biometric method of verification. So that is it about magnetic stripe. The smart card, on the other hand, make use of built-in chips and antennas that stores informations about the user, and it allows you to read it without physical contact. In other words, you do not need to swipe it like we do for the magnetic stripe. You don't have to swipe it through anything. It's contactless. So from a distance, you can have data on the card being read. So in the same sense, the is used often for security access. Now, in some instances, there's a need for a double verification where you need to enter in a PIN for extra security before access is granted. Um, Typically, you have some um, bank cards that are smart cards in the sense that you just have to um, tap it or from a distance from the POS, and is able to deduct money from your account. Now, however, with the same card, if the amount to be deducted is um, quite a large amount, you need to access, you need to provide an extra layer of security by putting in a PIN before the money can be deducted from your account. So basically, that is it for smart cards. So in the picture here, we can see the features I've spoken about. So the first one, we have the built-in chip here that stores the information about the user. So typical information that is stored will be your name, the ID, and the PIN, of the card, right? Then you are able to present the card close to um, the system, and when the system requires you to verify, you go ahead to enter in a PIN, and that's exactly what we see in this picture here. So that is it about smart card. Next is the physical token. So physical token is hardware device that is used to confirm a user identity. So it provides a user that has the possession of the device an OTP or one-time password. And when the user inserts that card or token device into the computer, so in this case, as we see here, so it could either be the token in the form of a pen drive or a card, right? And when that is done, the token is generated, okay, and the person needs to enter the token. So first of all, the person will enter his or her password, and then once the password is entered, the next thing to enter will be the OTP in order for the person to have access to whatever system they are going to work on. Example, we have banking systems. They use these physical tokens to ensure that the real account owner is the only person that has access to the account. Next, we have electronic tokens. Work very similar to the physical token, but in this instance, you do not have a physical hardware device to slot in, but rather it is a software device that is used. And in this case, the user opens a token app on their phone. So you can either do it that way, or there's an app that generates a password, one-time password, and shared with the user electronically. And then the user will have to enter in their PIN and the OTP in order to have access. So in some instances, you can just use your fingerprint and the one-time password, and for you to have access to use the system you want to use. So typically, if you having a banking app or a mobile wallet and you want to make payment, often if you are using a mobile app or even with the USD, what happens is that the bank will always will share a token with you in order to authenticate whether you are the same person having your phone or your device. So once you receive the one-time password, you confirm it and enter in your password or username, or you can use biometric with either your fingerprint, but you need to confirm the one-time password in order to proceed to make payment. So that is it with electronic tokens. So that brings us to the end on authentication. So we've seen various ways by which we can enter into systems. Some test question to check our understanding whether we've really understood password and authentications. So this is some questions you are encouraged to attempt. So you may pause the video, take some few minutes, and attempt this question. Okay, so I want to believe you know the answers that have been provided below in the sample answer. So you can go back and check with the other advantages and disadvantages to see whether you got your answer right. Next, we have anti-malware software. We want to look at typically what they do. So antivirus software, when installed on your computers, will detect and remove viruses from the computer. Again, if you connect an external drive to the computer and it also contains virus or has virus hidden on it, the antivirus software should be able to detect it and remove it from your machine or prompt you to take an action. Typically, most antivirus programs share some basic features that we want to discuss. So first, they are able to do file checking. So that means they check all software and files before they are run or loaded on the computer. So that's the first feature of an antivirus. The second one is virus database. So with the virus database, we are saying here that it compares detected code against a database of known virus signatures. So what this means is that every known virus has a unique pattern of code called a virus signature. And the antivirus software stores this signature into a database. And so anytime a file is scanned, the antivirus software will have to compare it with its code, with its signature code in the database it has. So if it matches it, then it will flag it as a virus or a malware for any proper action to be taken. So we've mentioned that first of all, they need to do a check, and the check is done using the virus database. Now, again, we have heuristic checking. So in this case here, we notice that this antivirus, most antivirus use what is referred to as a virus signature. So in the case of heuristic check, it analyzes the behavior of a software. And so if the software is behaving in an unusual pattern, then it could indicate that it has a virus which has not yet been detected or seen in its database. So that is what is meant by heuristic checking. Next is quarantine. So once a virus is detected, first of all, it is isolated and then an action is taken. So the isolation is the first thing down, and it either automatically will delete the file or to ask for your permission, and then you will take a decision on what to do. Then we have regular updates. So this needs to be done by the user. So every antivirus must be kept up to date. And the reason is that new viruses are being discovered continually. So there's a need for you to update your antivirus regularly. Next has to do with full system scan. So again, this is a recommendation. You need to do a weekly full scan in order to catch the modified viruses that are not actively running on your machine. Yeah. So that is basically it about the features of antiviruses. So now we have some test questions for you to try whether you have really understood what we have said about anti-malware software. Okay, so pause the video and see if you are able to answer the question. So you are asked to describe 3 features you would like to expect to find in an antivirus software. We've said or shared 6 points. You should be able to say 3 of them. Okay, so these are the answers. A sample answer, of course. So you can refer to the note and then find other additional answers. So, as advantages and disadvantages to video conferencing. So, first of all, it reduces travel costs and pollution. Next, conferencing can be arranged at short notice and at any time. And then it includes people not at the headquarters. So basically, you can have, let's say, this an office space with these 4 people interviewing or having a video conference. If there's one member who is supposed to be in the community who is not part or present at the office, that person can equally join a meeting from wherever they are. So it includes people not at the HQ, which means headquarters. Some disadvantages to video conferencing are that it's expensive to set up. The initial setup is always expensive, and then time lag, image jitter issues. I mean, there are cases where when you have bad network or bad internet, there can be some few issues with image. It's jittering. And then again, you have to rely on stable network connection in order to have a good meeting. So that is it about video conferencing. Next, we have audio conferencing as the next item within the electronic conference. So again, with audio conference, you have conference or meeting with people over the phone. And there are 2 ways. And basically, use a standalone phone, or you make use of the voice over the internet protocol, where you make use of internet to make calls as seen in the picture here. So phone conference can be either standalone or you make use of the internet. So it's basically the organizers and the participants have a PIN. When they dial a common code, they are able to join a meeting. All right, and then we've also touched on the use of computers to make audio calls. Now, again, there are some pros and cons as far as audio conferencing is concerned. So the first one, it allows people in different locations to communicate in real time. The conference again can be arranged in a short notice, and it reduces the time to travel, and the money that involved can be saved. Now, multiple people can join a call at the same time. Now, the disadvantage to audio call is that because you cannot see the person you are talking to, you cannot really appreciate um, how they react, or their facial reading. You cannot be read. So no visual communication. You cannot see other participants. Difficult to read the body language or facial expression of people you are interacting with. And with poor internet connection, your sound quality can also be affected. Then finally, if you have background noises or echo, it can disrupt the communication. Next, we have web conferencing. So with one conferencing, we can have either a webinar or a webcast. So with webinar, what happens is that you can have an interactive session, whereas a webcast is a one-way online broadcast where you are just being told or being given some set of instruction or training. Again, with the webinar, participant can ask questions and repost to post and interact with the presenter. On the other hand, participants merely just watch and listen with little or no interaction with the webcast. Okay, so those are some differences between a webinar and a webcast. So in both cases, you need to use the internet. So the internet is used to conduct this webinars or webcasts, right? So the conference is conducted online using the internet, and participants can join from anywhere in the world with an internet connection. The next point talks about screen sharing, whiteboard, and IM webcam. So here, participants can share their screen and collaborate with a virtual whiteboard, and then they send instant messages, and then use webcams for video communication. Now, delegate join via app or web links. And so basically, it talks about either you join using, for example, meeting apps like the Zooms, Teams, or just by clicking on a web link to join the conference. Now, slide presentation are shared in advance in most cases. So presenters' slide can be presented to participants before the meeting so they can follow along and review the content beforehand. So these are some um, items you need to know as far as webinar and web webcast is concerned for web conferencing. Finally, you have some test question on electronic conferencing, and you have to pause the video, and I advise you. So just pause the video and attempt it. Okay, I want to believe you got it right. So these are the answers, sample answers. All right, and these are my references for this video. And this brings us to the end of this video tutorial. All right, so till we meet again, bye-bye.